How are you doing today? Wes here from the Imaginarium of Wes MiSENER. Yeah, another video here for you today. Today's topic is making clothes expensive? Unfortunately, it is. I mean, there's ways to cut your costs, but if you're gonna make something from scratch, it can get pretty expensive. Um, the more custom you go with something, the more complicated the pattern, the more pattern pieces, the more difficult it is to sew. Like if the techniques are really, intricate, you're gonna need different kinds of machinery. So yeah, I mean, some of the basic stuff, like t-shirts and like sweatshirts and stuff wouldn't be as expensive as say, a tailored, suit jacket or, a coat, like a bomber jacket with zippers and a liner and all that kinds of stuff. So, obviously I think when you're starting out your line, you're gonna have to be very, conscious of where to start. Some people, I've read in Ralph Lauren's book, like he started out with neckties because I mean neckties you can make them in volume and they're not as expensive for you to get your brand started. So I mean, we'll just in this short video we're just gonna explore little tricks and tips, and I'll give you a few ideas on where to start, and then you can make that decision, based on your budget and what you're trying to accomplish and stuff. But like I think the costs these days are really going up, so starting out, I think it's critical when to be very very organized and very direct with what you want to accomplish at start, because you may only have a certain amount to start, and then you need to get income through the sales of your goods to keep going. So it's important to be focused. It's important to be looking to cut costs and not waste money on samples that maybe are not the best idea. Like I know, when me and my pattern maker are working together, and sometimes I've come up with a design and an idea, and we start working on it, and it's just like we get to a point where we're like, well, maybe this isn't gonna work. Maybe this is too much. Maybe this is like, a little too complicated, or it's just not executing properly from the vision. And sometimes we've had to, basically throw something out or put it aside and just go look like, we want to make it work, but this sample or this design or this concept or idea is just not working. So let's move on. I mean, there's all other kinds of ideas and other things to work on, and hopefully those will work out better. So, you get an idea of what you want to do when you're starting out, or even if you're already have your line and you want to move forward. And from my experience, I found I have maybe like 10, 15 ideas, and maybe only 7 or 8 are good, and the other ones I've had to throw out. And I'm thinking in my head later, I'm like, well, what was I thinking there? But I guess the whole thing, with the samples and making clothes and stuff is you start out with a base of ideas, and then you kind of go towards what's gonna work the best, and what seems to be working the best, and kind of toss out or put aside what's kind of really a struggle at this point, and maybe you can come back to it and re-explore it. So, I mean, you have to be very smart. I mean, I would suggest watch the other foundational videos. Like, obviously, when you're making clothes, and you try to do as much labor as you can do on your own. Like if you can cut the garment or sew it. I mean, that's if you have the time. If you have a lot more time and a lot less money, and you want to go that way. If you have a lot of money and not much time, then it's probably better to hire out, people to help you with those things. I always even also suggest hire out, people that are better than you anyways. Like it's great to go, to somebody who's been sewing for 30 years, and they'll, sew your sample for you and be able to tell you everything that's technically wrong with it. Like, they can critique you and help you, and even, you come back to get your sample, and they're just like, well, let's change the pattern, let's, that didn't go so well, or maybe you should change the operation, the sewing finishing, or like they can give you all types of knowledge. So, I mean, yes, it is expensive, but I think one of the kind of overlooked things is that people think they need to do everything themselves, but it's like, if you're just starting out, you don't really have the skill set to execute in a good way. So, sometimes taking a little money and hiring someone, or just kind of giving someone some money to sew the sample because they have 30 years experience and they can tell you all the ins and outs is very valuable. In the process, you may actually save money down the road because of like some of the little pointers and stuff, that they might be able to give you. And like another thing as well is, like, I've been hired, by customers that are like, hey, I want to start a line, but I have like no base of knowledge. So they'll hire me, pay me some money, and we'll get a plan together. I'll get the basics underneath them, and then I'll set them off in the right direction. And like, that will save them a lot of time and energy, and wasting money on buying fabric that maybe isn't at the right price, or just isn't very good, or like, so I think you have to really consider there's going to be like the upfront costs, but also think of the costs that could potentially come to you in the future if things aren't done well, or like, so when it is expensive to make clothes, obviously. It can be managed, the expenses can be managed. If you have the experience, the know-how, you can kind of not fall in every sort of pitfall. Like, I like to call fashion a money pit if things aren't going well, and there's no efficiency. It's like you're taking a shovel and you're shoveling money into the money pit, because you can just go crazy in this business, and your mistakes will compound themselves. So some of the basic costs, like wherever you live. I mean, I'll talk about like Toronto. If you're trying to, let's just talk about a basic T-shirt. Like, if you're going to start like with a basic T-shirt and you have no block and you're gonna do it from scratch, like, it's not unrealistic for working with a pattern maker for the pattern to maybe cost you, let's talk Canadian, and then maybe you guys can convert it to US or whatever, maybe it's equivalent, like the what pattern makers charge in the States or wherever you are. But like, let's just say like on kind of the first pattern, I would say would probably set you back, 75 to $100 just for the labor of the pattern, like working with a pattern maker. And then like, say you have your first pattern of your T-shirt now, and you want to buy some fabric, and say like, at kind of a retail level, but from a discounter, I think like being able to get some yardage from, because obviously you're only going to buy a couple yards, so you're not going to be able to get any volume. But if you can get, say, some like cotton jersey, like something basic, nothing too like crazy, not the greatest quality, but something you can use your sample. Like, if you spend like $6 to $8 a yard or a meter, if you're here in Canada, it depends on some of the the fabric stores or the wholesales or whatever. Some of them do yards, some of them do meters. So if you can spend like $6 to $8, and you're gonna, for a T-shirt, a T-shirt sample, buy at least a couple of yards, depending on how oversized the shirt is and how long it is. If you make it really long, then buy 2.5 to 3 yards because you're going to use a lot of fabric. But so you're looking at say 14 or sorry 12 to $14 or $16 for a couple of yards, and then you basically have to pay to have it sewn, and it wouldn't be unrealistic here in Canada for a factory to do like a t-shirt sample, for like $25 to $30 labor, depending on if you cut it or not. I mean, I always cut it, so I get a lower rate because I always bring a cut. But if they have to cut it, then they're gonna add extra cost on there. And that's even when and we're talking like just a sample. You don't even have your labels yet. You don't even have any of that kind of stuff. So, I mean, let's rework the math. 100 for the patterns. I always try to go on the higher side. I mean, you could get it cheaper, but you want to have someone who really knows what they're doing. And hopefully your pattern maker has set blocks from school, like technical school. So, if you're hiring a pattern maker, ask them do you have blocks? Do you have, a men's block? Do you have a women's block for tops? And, obviously they should have blocks for bottoms as well. That'll be a lot easier. So yeah, make sure your pattern maker has blocks. But let's get back to the cost of, doing like a t-shirt sample. So yeah, you're looking at about $100 for the first pattern, and then add the fabric in a couple yards. So let's cut it in the middle and say 15. So you're at 115 now, and then add the labor in. Say you get them to do the cutting and they charge you 30. You're at about $145 Canadian for the one t-shirt sample, and that's your first sample. So, as you move along, if you need to alter the pattern, say you didn't like your sample, like the neckline on your sample, or say there was something wrong with the fit, you're gonna have to revisit the pattern maker, and he's gonna charge you for the changes. And if you have to recut another sample, then you're gonna have to buy more yardage. You're gonna have to recut it and re-sew it for the labor. So I mean, you can add those costs on again. So you can see how, when you want to develop a really large line and it's complicated and it has a lot to it, that, wow, the money can really start to, add up, all the steps that you need to take. So my suggestion is, one, get very focused with how you want to start your line, or even if you've already started, how you want to continue to develop your line, right? And then two, try to, really keep the cost down any way you can. In this video, I just gave you some basics on the cost, just to give you more of a realistic, kind of expectation of what, some cost could be. I'm going to do other videos where we talk more in depth about how to cut costs, or little tricks. I mean, I have other videos tricks and tips on patterns, on samples, and how to manage those and how to cut costs. So, please subscribe. I have more videos coming out. If you want to see my work, I'm on Instagram. I have an online store as well. I have a book coming out soon, so there's lots of stuff that I'll be releasing. You can find that all below, all that information. I appreciate you watching. Thanks for your time. Send your comments, send me emails. I mean, if you have questions, I'd love to hear from you. And we'll talk to you soon. Thanks very much. Take care. Bye.